under a sky woven with streaks of soft amber and fading lavender, in a quiet suburban neighborhood where each house hummed the comforting rhythm of family life, a small miracle was unfolding in a modest home that smelled faintly of lavender, freshly baked bread, and the faint musk of dog fur. 11-year-old Maira clutched a crumpled flyer in one hand and held the other to her chest, where a warm, steady heartbeat thumped against her ribs. Not her own, but the tiny creature nestled inside her hoodie. The puppy was a surprise, one she had found behind the garbage bins outside her school, trembling, hungry, and with eyes that held 1,000 silent questions. No collar, no tags, just a whisper of life and an overwhelming need for love. She named him Bubbles, not because of anything particular, but because the first sound he made resembled a wet hiccup, and it made her laugh despite the knot in her throat. Maira didn't know it at the time, but this one decision, to bring home a discarded, unvaccinated puppy, would ripple across her life in ways neither she nor her family could imagine. Her mother, a nurse and part-time pet groomer, immediately recognized the signs: the dry nose, the tired eyes, the occasional sneeze that sounded far too weak for such a young soul. "He's too little," she had whispered, "and he hasn't been vaccinated. That's dangerous." But Maira, clinging to Bubbles as though her heartbeat alone could protect him, shook her head. "I'll do everything. I'll wake up early. I'll walk him. Just help me keep him alive." Her mother sighed, but she made the call to a vet the same night. Dr. Khalid, a seasoned veterinarian who ran a small clinic with peeling paint and the warm scent of antiseptic, agreed to see Bubbles first thing in the morning. What Maira didn't understand, and what many new puppy parents don't, is that those early weeks are critical. A puppy's immune system is like a half-built dam in a rising river. Without vaccinations, that dam could crumble at the first storm: parvovirus, distemper, rabies, words that seem too big and scary to fit inside something so tiny. At the clinic, as the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above and a parrot squawked from a cage in the corner, Dr. Khalid examined Bubbles with a furrowed brow. "He's about 7 weeks old," he said, running practiced fingers down the pup's back. "He's lucky. A little dehydrated, a little underweight, but we can start his schedule today." Maira leaned forward, absorbing every word like it was scripture. "What schedule?" she asked, her voice thin with fear and hope. "His vaccination schedule," Dr. Khalid replied. "He needs several rounds. It's like building a wall brick by brick. Miss one, and you leave a hole. Too early, and the bricks don't stick. Too late, and the virus gets in." Maira wrote everything down in a worn spiral notebook, even though the doctor handed her a pamphlet. She drew pictures of syringes and wrote down words like DHPP, Bordetella, leptospirosis, even if she didn't know what they meant. The first injection was met with a yelp that cut through her like broken glass, but Bubbles didn't flinch again. He licked her cheek as if forgiving her instantly. Over the next few weeks, her life revolved around the calendar stuck to the fridge with paw print magnets. At 6 weeks, he'd gotten his first DHPP shot. At 8, the second. 10 weeks brought the third, and with it came the first real scare. One rainy evening, just days before the next dose was due, Bubbles stopped eating. He lay curled up, nose to tail, shivering despite the warm room. Maira panicked. Her mother wrapped Bubbles in a towel and drove through slick roads to the vet's office, headlights slicing the night like anxious eyes. "It could be Parvo," Dr. Khalid murmured gravely, running a rapid test. Maira felt the air drain from the room. She imagined telling her friends that Bubbles was gone, that she hadn't protected him, but the test came back negative. It was a mild stomach bug, the kind puppies get. "Doctor," Khalid smiled. "That vaccine, it may have saved his life." The relief was so thick it felt like gravity doubled. That night, Bubbles climbed into Maira's bed for the first time, whimpering quietly until fingers stroked his head. He stayed there every night after. The weeks that followed felt like chapters in a secret novel only Maira and Bubbles understood. At 12 weeks, Bubbles received his rabies vaccine. Maira imagined it like a magical armor that would keep away the monsters she'd heard about on the news. The ones who bit and ran, the ones who never came home. 14 weeks brought more shots: leptospirosis, another DHPP booster. Bubbles whimpered less now, trusting the process. He was growing too, not just in size, but in personality. He chased butterflies in the backyard, barked at the vacuum, and somehow knew when Maira had had a bad day. He'd rest his head on her lap like a therapist who charged in kisses. One day, as Maira waited in line at the pet store to buy more food, an older woman behind her struck up a conversation. She mentioned how her niece's puppy had died of Parvo 2 months ago, just before his vaccinations began. They thought he was fine. He looked healthy, she said, shaking her head. But puppies are like toddlers in a world full of viruses. Maira thought of Bubbles then, of all the shots he had endured, of every time she had kissed the spot where the needle went in. She realized something huge and silent. Each dose wasn't just medicine, it was a promise. When Bubbles turned 6 months old, Maira threw him a swole birthday party with homemade dog biscuits and a balloon tied gently to his collar. Her friends laughed, but they stayed and took pictures. Bubbles posed with a tiny hat, his tail a blur of joy. One of the guests, a boy named Harris, mentioned that his family had just gotten a puppy, a golden retriever named Luna. "She's perfect," he said. "No need for shots yet. She's always inside." Maira felt her stomach knot. That night, she wrote him a long message explaining what she'd learned about how diseases didn't knock, about how mosquitoes could carry heartworms, how even indoor dogs weren't immune to risk. She sent him photos of Bubbles at the clinic, sleeping after vaccines, smiling with his tongue out. A week later, Harris told her Luna had started her shots. That's when Maira realized she had become an advocate without meaning to. She wasn't just saving Bubbles now, she was helping save others too. A year later, Maira and her mother returned to Dr. Khalid's clinic for Bubbles' annual booster. He weighed nearly 3 times his original size and had a small scar above his paw from climbing a fence in pursuit of a cat, they guessed. He was strong, playful, and healthy. Dr. Khalid smiled as he examined him. "You did everything right," he said. "Most people start strong and forget to follow up. But immunity isn't forever. It needs reminders." Maira nodded. It made sense. Relationships needed reminders too. Love did. Loyalty. She hugged Bubbles tightly, thinking how close they had come to never meeting, how a missed shot or a day's delay could have ended everything. When she got home, she opened a new notebook. This one wasn't just for tracking vaccines, it was for stories, of Bubbles, of others, of how every jab, every visit, every ounce of care was a quiet act of rebellion against loss. Over the years, Maira turned that notebook into a blog, Bubblesandbravery, where she wrote stories about the vaccination journeys of dogs across the country. Rescue shelters began to reach out. Parents messaged her to ask what shots their puppies needed. Some even shared stories of how they'd lost dogs young because they didn't know. One mother wrote, "We almost skipped the second round. Then I read your post about the brick wall of immunity. It saved our Bruno." Maira cried reading that. Bubbles curled up beside her, now a calm, wiser dog with eyes that had seen storms and survived. He became a therapy dog at a children's hospital when he turned 3, his vaccination card laminated and updated, proof of his armor. Every time a child touched his fur and smiled for the first time in weeks, Maira would whisper a silent thank you to the shots, the doctors, the calendar with the paw print magnets. And when Bubbles turned 10, old now with silver in his snout and a slower wag in his tail, Maira organized a community pet health fair. Dozens of puppies received free vaccines that day. The mayor attended. Someone asked her, "Why do you care so much about vaccinations?" She looked at Bubbles, who stood beside her like a living monument to hope, and said, "Because one shot can be the reason someone still has their best friend." That night, as twilight hugged the town and streetlights blinked to life like sleepy stars, Maira lay beside Bubbles on the porch. The breeze was cool, and the scent of jasmine curled through the air. She thought about that first day, the trembling puppy behind the school bins, the flyer in her hand, the promise she had made without even knowing how deep it would go. Bubbles sighed and rested his head on her chest. His heartbeat was slower now, but steady, safe. And as the night deepened and the world spun quietly on, Maira smiled, knowing that somewhere out there, another child was reading one of her stories, clutching a puppy in their arms, wondering if a shot really made a difference. And she hoped they'd choose to believe it did. 'Cause sometimes saving a life isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's a gentle prick of a needle, a mark in a notebook, and the decision to show up again, no matter how small the heart you're protecting might seem. As stars began to scatter across the velvet night, and the world hushed into stillness, Maira closed her eyes beside Bubbles, listening to the quiet rhythm of his breath, each inhale a testament to choices made in courage and love. She thought about all the little moments, the clinic visits, the scribbled notes, the fearful nights, and the joyful mornings, and realized something beautiful. The vaccine schedule hadn't just saved Bubbles' life. It had given her one too, a purpose, a voice, and a bond no illness could ever break. Just then, Bubbles gave a soft woof in his sleep, as if dreaming of those early days, of butterflies and belly rubs and the first girl who ever believed he was worth saving. Maira looked out at the quiet street, her heart full, and whispered, "You were never just a puppy. You were the reason I learned how to protect something fragile and fight for something silent." In the end, it wasn't just about shots and schedules. It was about love taking responsibility. It was about understanding that the smallest act, a vaccine given at the right time, can echo through years, saving stories that were meant to be lived. And somewhere, in another part of the world, a child would read Bubbles' story, hold their new puppy tighter, and realize love isn't just hugs and treats. Sometimes it's a calendar, a clinic visit, and the quiet decision to choose life before it's too late. In the end, the journey of Bubbles wasn't just about survival. It was a quiet revolution built on trust, timing, and tender responsibility. What began as a frightened pup behind a dumpster turned into a lifelong lesson that vaccinations aren't just medical necessities, they're promises kept, futures protected, and love made visible through action. The needles may have been small, but their impact was immense, allowing a discarded puppy to grow into a symbol of hope, a beacon for other pet parents, and a reminder that life is fragile, but with care, it can be fiercely defended. Maira's story, like so many others, proves that the true power of a vaccination schedule lies not in the shots themselves, but in the lives they safeguard. One puppy, one heartbeat, one love story at a time.